Put everything back in your pocket.
All right, great.
Thomas Hodgson has been the sheriff of Bristol County, Massachusetts for over 20 years.
You get one too, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And then to the
She's
back.
very thorough.
Yeah, into the back.
She's very thorough.
Too fast.
He's responsible for the county jails, overseeing more than 1,200 inmates.
Uh-huh. Gentlemen, how are you? Steve, really good? See you. How you doing, buddy? See you. We're going to take you down to show you the classroom area. We have people who attend different classes here. When I first came here, they had TVs in the cells. The inmates could smoke, basically would get almost as much food as they wanted. And I believe that was the formula of failure. I believe that taking the TVs away, taking away the weights, which they had, giving them sound nutritional meals, but not as much as you want, and making sure they're focused on the opportunity to go to programs was the way to go.
Sheriff Hodgson may look like any other law enforcement officer, but sheriffs are politicians, elected by voters. With the office comes considerable power, which includes how they run their jails.
How are you? Good. Jail should never be a country club. And anyone who spent time in our facilities will tell you they are the furthest thing from a country club. And we know our approach is working.
You can be 100 miles or even 50 miles apart between two different jails, and your experience will completely differ and be completely based on who is the sheriff in that county.
There are over 3,000 sheriffs across the country, and there's a wide spectrum in how they do their job. Hodgson's tough-on-crime approach may play well in elections, but it raises concerns by critics who are worried about the living conditions for inmates.
Sheriff Hodgson has done many things to humiliate prisoners and to deprive them of basic comforts, putting them in chain gangs out on the street, cramming them into small cells, having them sleep on the floor, charging $5 a day for the privilege of staying in his facility.
Many sheriffs don't have term limits, and once they're elected, there are very few checks on their power. In most cases, no one can fire them. In this episode of Fault Lines, we look at what can happen when the power of a sheriff goes unchecked.
They have this huge amount of autonomy, huge amount of independence, huge amount of authority. They make decisions that really dramatically affect people's lives, including life and death questions. That always breeds problems when you have a lot of authority and not a lot of accountability.
Thomas Hodgson is the longest-serving sheriff in Massachusetts. But in recent years, he's made news for the high suicide rate in his jails.
You're in one of the behavioral units where there's more control over the inmates. We also sometimes will conduct what we call eyeball watches here. We'll have an officer sitting watching that person. If they feel that there's a potential risk for someone, it doesn't mean necessarily they're going to commit suicide, but they may have suicidal ideations. When we're told that, we will then, working with mental health, put them on a watch where an officer just watches them the whole time. So this officer's assigned to sit in this chair and just monitor the person that's inside that cell for their own safety.
Mental health watch is so punitive at Bristol County. It's worse than solitary confinement. You're put in a cell with what's called a Fergie, or a suicide smock, and no clothing. You're watched constantly by a corrections officer who's peering at you through a window. That's it. You're in that cell 24/7. That kind of response to suicidal feelings is what stops people from reporting it to begin with.
Bonnie Tenerillo is a lawyer with Prisoner Legal Services in Boston. Her organization is suing Sheriff Hodgson for housing mentally ill inmates in solitary confinement.
When you have serious mental illness, you should not be in solitary confinement for more than a brief period of time. And what we say in our lawsuit is they don't have the procedures in place to make sure that doesn't happen.
The suit also alleges that prisoners in Bristol County jails are not getting adequate mental health treatment. We met a group of former inmates to ask them about their time in Bristol County Jail. Some of them are still in the criminal justice system and don't want to show their faces for fear of retribution.
If you don't mind me asking, how many guys here actually attempted suicide while they were in that jail? Wow. How many guys here thought about suicide while they were in that jail? Everyone. How many of you guys were on meds when you went in there? Everyone was on meds when you went in there. Yep. When you went in there, were you able to stay on your meds? Did they get the meds you needed?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
No?
Nothing.
No? If you feel yourself slipping emotionally or mentally and you need mental health help, what's the process? What do you do to get it?
You pray. You pray. Put your hands together and
You
pray.
have to fill out a sick call slip. They supposed to, I think they have 1 or 2 or 3 days to get back to you, but sometimes I used to go weeks and weeks and I have to keep putting it in like one every day until they see me, until I was just about ready to hang it up.
Joachim Forte was in jail in Bristol County in 2013. He suffers from bipolar disorder.
There you go. I don't know how hard it's because George David. You're welcome.
He now volunteers in a soup kitchen. In jail and severely depressed, Joachim says he reached out for help.
Well, I wrote them a letter. I wrote the mental health department a letter that I had been feeling really, really suicidal, and that I was gonna go through with it. Well, 3 days later, I didn't hear nothing back from them. And then that night, I tried to commit suicide again. They told me that they came and took me down. They told me that they used those electric things to shock you back to life. And then the mental health department finally realized, wow, this guy is serious. He's really trying to commit suicide.
At least 8 people have committed suicide in Bristol County Jail since 2015. Twice as many as other jails in Massachusetts, and 3 times the national average. We spoke to a woman whose partner of 24 years killed himself while in Bristol County Jail. She didn't want us to show her face on camera.
So this was actually the photo that we used at the service, because it was one of my favorite photos of Mike, just because his eyes looked so green.
Michael Ray was an inmate in Bristol County awaiting trial in 2015. He suffered from bipolar disorder and had substance abuse issues.
And I have thousands of letters. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I have boxes and boxes of letters. So I just grabbed a few.
He wrote to his partner about conditions in the jail, telling her that his requests for help were ignored.
He said, you have to tell people this isn't right. And that's just one. I mean, he says it in this one. He tells me, this is dated October 19th, 2015. And he said, I think I'm losing my mind and don't know what to do anymore. No one asks about me or answers my slips for help. I'm just talking. This is my only option of some kind of therapy, is writing you. I don't want to die. I'm sorry. I don't want to die, but I feel like I'm dying from the inside out already. I love you guys so much and don't want to leave you. This was again about the mental health. He's seen no one and has put in 3 more slips since then. And this was dated December 4th, so it had been almost 2 months since he had put in that initial slip.
It literally sounds like for months he's requesting
Yes.
mental health support and he's not getting it.
Correct. The one thing he says in all of his letters is that he wanted help, and it never came.
On Saturday, June 10th, 2017, Michael hanged himself in his cell.
Michael is ultimately responsible for Michael's actions. I would never say that Tommy Hodgson is the one. What I would say is, I don't believe that that facility is ever going to change their practices as long as their leader is Mr. Hodgson, because I think that he really thinks that he does a great job. And that to me is so frightening and so sad.
Sheriff Hodgson said that no cases of suicide or attempted suicide were related to a lack of medical or mental health treatment. After the death of Michael Ray, Sheriff Hodgson ordered an internal investigation into the suicides of 7 inmates between 2015 and 2017. The report found that all medical, mental health, and security standards were met.
I don't think that an internal review is a substitute for oversight. There's no watchdog that's saying, let's look at these practices in the counties, and it's a real vacuum, and self-reporting can't substitute for that.
You seem like a results-oriented guy. At the end of the day, who should be held accountable for a suicide rate that's that high and that different than other jails in this state and across the nation?
If you could identify something that would say that our system has failed, that in fact is the cause, or that we just don't have the level of interest in taking care of the mental health cases, or whatever it is. Look, I'm responsible for everything that happens here. I'm the sheriff. So I am ultimately responsible for everything.
If you can't identify what it is, at what point do you got to step aside? Because you have the duty of care. And if that duty of care isn't being taken care of and you don't get why, who gets to step in and say, we just need a new team here?
Well, ultimately the citizens do.
I think it's a problem when law enforcement policies and incarceration are governed only by the popular opinion. Prisoners are protected by the Constitution from any kind of popular impulse to unfairly punish.
I have never seen clear evidence that a sheriff faced serious electoral repercussions for the treatment of inmates in their jails. You know, sheriffs hold an incredible amount of power and are allowed to run the jails in the ways that they see fit, and we see a lot of abuses, and then we don't necessarily see those abuses show up in the next campaign cycle.
In large parts of America, sheriffs are the only form of law enforcement and do everything from running the jails to patrolling the streets. But they also have a dark history. Here in the South, sheriffs played a violent role in the Jim Crow era and in suppressing civil rights activists in the 1960s. To this day, sheriffs are still a remarkably homogeneous group. They are 95% male and 99% white. In 2008, the parish of Iberia in southern Louisiana elected a new sheriff. He was a retired state trooper named Lewis Ackle.
Saturday, vote Lewis Ackle, sheriff.
You know, we keep blaming the bottom for what the top keep allowing.
Kevin Broussard and Whitney Lee grew up here.
Wherever you see a track and a lot of blacks, it's West End. Because no business is coming here. When you get like Lewis Street, that's when the white side of town starts.
Sheriff Ackle campaigned on a platform of reform, but soon after his election, he stripped away any internal oversight within the department. During his tenure, 10 of his deputies would plead guilty to federal crimes. In 2010, Ackle established a special unit to deal with what he saw as problem areas. It was called the Impact Team.
Impact was designed for the West End. Impact was designed to terrorize the neighborhood. When Impact hit the street, it was best to get out the street.
Tuesdays and Thursdays was their day.
When Impact hit the street,
everybody knew Tuesdays and Thursdays.
You go in. When Impact hit the street, you go in. Because if you're on a bicycle, you're in a car, you're gonna get stopped, you're gonna get searched.
It was known that there were Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Oh, yeah,
Man, that was the day. You get off the street Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Because they coming.
They coming.
Sheriff's deputies would later testify to routinely beating up and making false arrests in the West End. But the abuses of power didn't stop there. As Whitney Lee found out when he was awaiting trial in the Iberia Parish Jail in 2014.
It started out simple enough. They'd come in and they were going to do some searches, some strip searches, kind of a shakedown type thing.
Clay Burgess is Whitney Lee's lawyer and has at least a dozen pending lawsuits against Sheriff Ackle.
Whitney has had some breathing problems. He was in medical. They pulled him out of medical to kind of be part of this shakedown.
So I tell the warden, say warden, I gotta get my breathing treatment. He said, I don't give a f, get on the yard. I said, that's the way you feel? Like, yeah, okay, so I goes on the yard.
But then the officers started commanding them to get on their knees. I don't want to be gross, and put your ass in the air for your girlfriend, put your face down like you're praying for Allah, and just abuse, general abuse. But Whitney's problem was when he was down in these positions, he literally was having trouble breathing.
Everybody got on. I told him, I stood up. I said, sir, I can't get on like that, man. I said, I can't breathe. I said, I didn't have my breathing treatment. I suffer with asthma. I showed him my asthma pump. He said, I don't give a f, you gonna get on? So I told him, I said, no, I'm not getting on. So he grabbed my shirt and took out his little stick, and he hit me like about 6, 7 times on my leg.
They became more and more frustrated as Whitney didn't just crumble and cry and beg for mercy. And the more Whitney, not fighting back, not resisting, but simply standing there calm, which is just, quite frankly, remarkable, as they are beating him, it infuriated him. So to the point they got so frustrated, they backed up with a shotgun and shot a big beanbag round at him, couldn't be 10 feet away. The pain had to be enormous.
Whitney Lee sued the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office over the incident. His case has recently been settled.
I done been through a lot of things, and it kind of hurt me because I've been shot at, but I ain't never been shot. It took me to go to jail to get shot.
As the abuses by the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office started to come out, the FBI and the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice started investigating.
So essentially what happened is you've had everything from false arrests, severe beatings in the jail, to officers lying under oath for convictions, to them letting dogs loose on prisoners, and beating prisoners. It's almost every crime that you can think of. Lying about evidence, planting evidence, literally beating people who are enemies of Ackle.
After the Department of Justice investigated, Sheriff Ackle was charged with ordering the beating of inmates in the jail and conspiring to cover it up. His trial took place in the fall of 2016. It was moved to another town, 3 hours away. Curtis Ozen was one of the inmates in the jail that day in 2011. He was awaiting trial on a misdemeanor charge. Now he tells us he can no longer live with any sense of peace.
I'm scared to get pulled over. I'm afraid I'll get stopped, and I don't know what an officer, what his vendetta could be, what his motive is. I can't trust that, man. I fear that he would kill me, shoot me, beat me, do something. It happened to me 2 times already. It's not gonna happen a third.
What do you mean it happened to you 2 times?
In Iberia Parish, I was beaten in a chapel in a room like this.
In the jail?
In the jail. Beaten down, man, like a dog, in handcuffs.
This is security camera footage from the jail's recreation yard that day. The guards were doing a shakedown, taking inmates out of their cells and searching for contraband. Curtis says someone near him insulted the guards. The deputies thought the comment came from him.
Louis Ackle walks in the door. Hey, Mr. Ackle, this is Benign. Ackle tells the officer, detain him. Boom, he slaps him on the ground. He got me on the ground. I'm like this, the officer on my back. Ackle comes, put the dog in my face, let the dog loose on him.
That's Curtis at Sheriff Ackle's feet.
He thought I said a comment. You see? Not he knew, he thought. Yeah. Gets in the chapel, handcuff me again. Handcuff me again, some ties. Been in the cell, he comes in the room. Curtis, get on your f***ing knees, man. For what? What's up, man? Get on your f***ing knees. All right, man, all right, you got that. I ain't do nothing, bro. He got his baton. Poking him. I'm the I'm like, man, come on, man. Why you doing that, bro? Like that. Now who the huh? Lay your f***ing ass on the ground. I lays on the ground like this, man. I'm like, man, you're doing that for nothing, man. I didn't do it, I didn't say that, man. So you're not gonna tell me? I don't know. Boom! Hit me with the baton right here in the neck, man, with a piece of iron like this. In my neck, bam. I was like, man, come on, please, bro. And that's when he went to work. Mother, I told you, mother. Who now? Who now, mother? Huh? Man, you did that for nothing, man. I didn't say that, bro. Well, tell me who the said it. Cops to beat me up in the jailhouse where I'm supposed to be protected. And I'm in here on a misdemeanor. The lowest crime a person could commit, man.
Word got to Curtis's mother, Dorothy Ozin, that he had been beaten in jail. She says it took her 2 days to finally get the warden on the phone.
Tuesday morning, I called back, and then I finally spoke to him. And he told me, Miss Ozan, I don't know who giving you this information, but nothing happened to Curtis. Curtis is fine. I said, but I want to come over there. I want to see him for myself. Well, no, you can't come over here because it's against policy and this and that, and we can't let you see him. I said, well, it looks like I'm gonna have to go a little bit further than you. About an hour, maybe an hour and a half later, he called me back. He said, Miss Ozan, we're gonna take him to the hospital. I said, what you mean take him to the hospital? I said, is it that bad? He said, well, he got a few scrapes, this and that, but we're gonna take him to the hospital just to have him checked out.
It was 2 days before Curtis was taken to the hospital.
I had a fracture under my eye, broken bone, broke fractured rib, a fracture in my kneecap from a baton stick.
Why'd they take you to the chapel?
Because it's isolated, soundproof. See what I'm saying?
No
you
cameras?
Oh, you want up in there, nobody's gonna hear you.
No cameras?
No cameras, no nothing. No sound, no nothing. And it's dug off in the jail. So they could take you in there, and from there to the hiding spot, the dungeon. They had it so planned out so good, man. And they was doing it on the regular, and the officers in Iberia Parish would tell you that. A cop gonna take, I'm gonna beat your ass, boy. I'm gonna whip your ass. A cop. If I have any type of incident or anything going on in my household, I would refuse to call the police, man. Refuse.
Ackle told them to do it.
Ackle directed us to do it this way. No other way. This way. And that was the law. And he's still a sheriff of Iberia Parish. I don't understand.
How certain are you that Ackle ordered the beating?
I heard him tell them to deal with me accordingly. Well, what's accordingly?
During Ackle's trial, former Deputy Sheriff Ben LaSalle testified, verifying the details of Curtis's story. He also said that Ackle ordered the beatings. Sheriff Ackle was tried before a mostly white jury. He was acquitted of all charges. After the trial, he blamed his deputies.
One of the things that this case did was help eliminate rogues from the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office who went beyond the law and beat on innocent people and planted drugs on innocent people and stole from drug dealers to go eat. That is totally opposite of what I am and what I've been.
He declined our interview requests. With 10 of Ackle's deputies behind bars for their crimes, the city of New Iberia has voted to replace the sheriff's department with a new police force. Louis Ackle continues on as sheriff of the parish and is still in charge of the jail. While we were filming in southern Louisiana, 5 more sheriff's deputies from nearby towns were arrested for beating prisoners.
It's not shocking to anyone. There's no ripple effect. There's no wave. There's no outrage. I mean, think about it. You're down here for just a number of days, and 2 different departments within 60 miles of here, 5 deputies are arrested for abusing prisoners. Right? I mean, I would think in another part of the country, and maybe a bigger media market or whatever, that'd be. I mean, it made the news. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know 4 people that slowed down for it.
Even years after the assault in the jail, Curtis Ozen is still struggling to deal with the trauma.
I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live like that. I want to drive my daughter to the ball. I want to drive her to the movies. You know, I have a baby, man. A little baby girl, you know. I don't want her to go through that. I don't want her to know that her daddy living in constant fear of a fucking police officer. I want her to know if she isn't in trouble, that she can call the authority. Yeah, man. I want her to live like that, not up like me, cuz. They me up real bad, man. Yeah.